Hello, Gay USA audience listening to us somewhere on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. It's Ann and Andy back for another week of news. And yes, we're both here. So far, not coughing. Ready to bring you little summaries and reflections on Pride weekend, which was chock full of stuff, and all the really horrifying news. Right, Andy?
Yes, and we're not coming to you from the studio out of an abundance of caution. I'm staying on StreamYard this week. I think I'm pretty much over what I've been suffering from, but so I decided to do it from home once again. I know it's not ideal, but we have a lot of news.
And out of solidarity, I too am doing it on StreamYard, so we will have a balance and a good look. And then with any luck, we'll both be back in the studio next week. But at the moment, it's the home show from Gay USA.
Shoot.
And our director just said, shoot. I hope that's not anything drastic. I think I'll mute my phone.
And we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
How are you, Ann?
Yes, we start with the old folks' medical reports. I'm good. I took last week off because I had a really horrible cold that laid me low for a few days and set me back in my preparations for the show. But I am back on my feet and back running around town. I am almost at the end of my radiation treatments. By the time you see me next week, I will have finished them and gotten a haircut. And then I go on some years of drugs, pills that are preventive pills. It's the classic pills that try to prevent any reoccurrence of any breast cancer.
Well, we're glad you're back. I know I wasn't too well. I think I had your same cold. Got through the show last week with a lot of coughing. Hope I don't this week. I'm taking antibiotics. I'm doing all those things. But next week, we both hope to be back in the studio.
Yes. And, I watched the show. First of all, you and Mick did a great job. I really appreciate the fact that you're both there to do that. And I didn't think your coughing was so terrible. I was prepared to lay into you for being on the show with coughing too much.
Our director, Rich, has pointed out where the mute button is on StreamYard, so I will use that if I need to cough again.
Okay.
So we get to the news. What are we coming up on? Independence Day. There's not much to celebrate this year, but we'll tell you how the Republican budget bill will decimate and sometimes completely destroy LGBTQ and HIV services, among many other terrible things.
With one tiny point of light in the middle of it. But yeah, pretty bad. And we'll bring you scenes from Chicago Pride, the New York City Drag March and Dyke March and Pride Parade, and the Queer Liberation March here.
And then we're not trying to bury the headline, but there, as you know, there was a blizzard of reactionary decisions from the U.S. Supreme Court. Even the one that we supposedly won has a downside.
The president of Andy's alma mater, the University of Virginia, resigns over anti-DEI pressure from the Department of Justice.
American Airlines shareholders, though, summarily rejected an anti-LGBTQ resolution.
Amazing and very heartening. Another beloved Catholic teacher was fired for having a husband, in this case, a husband who's been dead for 2 years.
You can't be too careful. Record numbers marched in Budapest Pride in defiance of the fascist ban on the event by the sinking Orban government.
The International Olympic Committee is poised to ban transgender athletes.
75 were arrested at a gay party in Indonesia, and 50 were arrested trying to conduct Pride there in, what was it, Jakarta, wasn't it?
I don't know. You tell me. And Andy is reviewing the play Prince Faggot off Broadway.
That's the title. Okay. Well, we'll start with a little bit of good news. New York elected a totally progressive candidate for the Democratic nomination for mayor, Zoran Mamdani. There he is marching in the Queer Liberation March, holding up the trans flag. Cuomo skipped both New York Pride marches. Eric Adams, the current mayor, was just endorsed by Donald Trump, who threatened to arrest Zoran and deport him. Because he's a naturalized citizen. But he won, going away with 56% of the vote. And that's the most that any mayoral candidate has gotten in a primary since 1989 with David Dinkins. Also, all the dinosaur Democrats, and I'm talking about Schumer and Gillibrand and all these people, they're reluctant to endorse him, but Zoran doesn't need them. He activated this mass of young people who increased the vote. Andrew Cuomo got all the votes that he wanted to, which is the same as Eric Adams got the last time. But Zoran brought in another 100,000 people. So it's very exciting. And
exciting. Well, just 1 second. I was on my way to make a cameo appearance at the Queer Liberation March. I'd already had a big weekend, and I was just going to drop in. So I was walking down the sidewalk on 8th Avenue to meet up with the march coming up 8th Avenue. I'm sauntering along, and then who should appear suddenly from my left, charging onto the sidewalk, but Zoran and his little entourage, maybe 10 people. So I just walked right into their crowd. We walked into the front of the Queer Liberation March there. I stood next to him and said, "Welcome to the People's March." And he turned around and I said, "Thank you," and shook his hand, and he had a big smile on his face. And it was just great to see him there.
And I just want to, and I've only met him once, and it was at Charlie Rangel's funeral, but his support for LGBTQ rights is longstanding. Here's a picture of him, and I covered this rally. He didn't speak to it. He just came to it. This was when trans rights were under attack from the Trump administration back in February, in the freezing cold in Union Square. And we have a picture of him there. He's got a lot of public support for trans rights and shows that it's not politically dangerous for Democrats to stand by the trans community. He's pledged $57 million on medical centers that provide gender-affirming care and $8 million more to develop new and broader resources. He attended the Trans Day of Visibility rally in March and a trans community town hall in May. He wrote, "Queer and trans people across the United States are facing an increasingly hostile political environment." So he's aware of all that and heavily focused on expanding, making New York City a sanctuary city for trans people.
And I loved his statement on, I don't know, Face the Nation or whatever it was this weekend, where he was asked about income inequality and said, "Well, I think it'd be nice if there were no billionaires." Couldn't agree more. But
that's what's ruined the country.
Of course.
You let people eat all their money, the billionaires. Why do you think we have this political crisis? Because billionaires have extra money and they buy the government.
And this new bill is only going to increase the disparity. I knew Zoran's parents were the great filmmaker Mira Nair, and his father's a professor at Columbia. But I happened upon a clip of her talking about her filmmaking and saying that one of the greatest compliments she got was from the widow of the director of Battle of Algiers, saying that her films had the same spirit at that. And she said that was just the most wonderful thing to hear, because she makes films that have various settings, but they're really all about speaking truth to power. And it sort of warmed my heart to know that that was the atmosphere that he grew up in.
Okay. Let's go to Chicago, because they had the first Pride March in the country back in 1970, a day before we had one in New York, commemorating the Stonewall. And one of the people leading the way was Governor, there on the right, Governor J.B. Pritzker there. And of course, he is trying to run for president. He does not showing up much in the polls yet, but he certainly has a great message.
Well, Zoran didn't show up much in the polls at first either, so don't count out Pritzker.
I don't count out anybody. Actually, the first poll that came out had a homosexual man in the lead, our former transportation secretary.
Pete Buttigieg.
Yes. Okay. Let's go to, of course, on Friday, the big thing in New York was the drag march. We have some pictures from Ellen Nypris here, photos from the drag march. We'll just, that's held at 7:30. Flicking through there, some very colorful costumes and get-ups, and there's some children there dressed up as well, and people holding signs saying "Protect the dolls, live, laugh, lesbian," and fund the CDC. And look who else is there! One of the marshals of the parade, Ann Northrup.
Yes, I had volunteered to help hold back traffic from running over the marchers, and that's my great friend Ken, known as Huckleberry in this context, the organizer of the drag march, a really great guy. And he says there were 5,000 to 6,000 people marching in the drag march. It was enormous. One of the problems of marshaling was that you had to keep running ahead of the march to be able to close the avenues to the traffic, who of course were not happy to have to suddenly be confronted with a stoppage of about 30 minutes as the march sauntered across town from the East Village to the Stonewall. But it was a joyous occasion, as always. And as you see, some people's drag was more formal than others, but it was great to be at the drag march.
And then on Friday comes the Dyke March.
Saturday.
Yes, the next day, the annual New York City Dyke March. There they are marching in front of the public library, going down Fifth Avenue. We have another picture there. Femmes against fascism. This machine kills fascists. It certainly had a strong political message.
Yeah, and as always, it's a sort of rogue march, no permits, no negotiations with cops, just assemble at Bryant Park in the afternoon at 5 o'clock and then take Fifth Avenue. We're going to show you some video, we hope, at the end of what happens at the end of Fifth Avenue.
And then on Sunday, which is the anniversary of the Stonewall, there are a couple of marches. We're involved with the Queer Liberation March, which left from the AIDS Memorial and marched up to Lenape Circle there. There's some signs, trans kids, you'll never walk alone. That was one of the themes. There's the oldest continuous activist in the country, Randy Wicker, there, marching along. He made it out there. And then who else do we have? ACT UP had a big banner against the horrible Republican bill, and ACT UP was there. And then we marched past, right there past the post office, the old post office, on our way uptown.
Yeah.
All right. And then downtown, one of the grand marshals of the New York City Pride was Corinne Jean-Pierre. This is a photo from Donna Aceto. We appreciate her work. And Corinne, of course, was the press secretary for President Biden and is now fashioning herself as an independent, not as a Democrat.
So a lot of we got these pictures from a variety of places. The great Donna Aceto taking a lot of these pictures. Jackie Rudin, who took that picture of me and Huckleberry. And as we said, Ellen Nypris for some of the others. But a great crowd of our favorite photographers out there taking these pictures, and we're very grateful to all of them for supplying them to us.
One of the controversies in Pride across the country has been the participation of uniformed police officers. And of course, wouldn't tolerate that in Queer Liberation March. Anybody can march, but not cops in uniform with their guns. And New York City Pride has had a policy against it for a number of years, which they said they would reevaluate. And they said, no, we're not letting anyone in with guns in the march. So the New York City, right there in the center, waving there is the police commissioner,
Jessica Tisch.
Sorry, Jessica Tisch. She's the police commissioner now. And they had a protest against the Pride March. Let the cops back in. Now, I want to point something out here. They're participating in a protest, so they're not allowed to march in uniform, right? So, to be in uniform, to participate in a protest. But the Pride March billed itself as Pride in protest. So, like, what gives? All they're asking from New York City Pride is don't bring your guns, and they won't give up on their guns.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Phone ringing behind me. Well, the thing that annoys it's the house phone. The thing that annoys me about this thing with the cops is the cops are all up in arms about you're being mean to us, you're keeping us out of this. And never do they acknowledge what they have done to LGBTQ people, to Black people, to people all over the city in the violence of the arrests they perform for no reason at all, the harassment they do. They're not welcome in the Queer Liberation March or the Pride Parade or whatever these days, because they are absolutely cruel to so much of this city. And they have apologized for Stonewall. Fine. That was, 56 years ago. How about what they're doing to people now? Not to mention
for 100 years.
ICE. How dare they?
They haven't apologized for all that.
How dare they act like they're being discriminated against? I want to hear them have a real conversation about how they treat people. And maybe if they acknowledge that and truly, they've been ordered time and time again to change their ways about how they arrest people and how they police protests and marches. And they ignore it all and they just go out and do whatever the hell they want. And they are just violent and cruel so much of the time. Not 100%, but really egregiously. And I am so offended by their I'm being mistreated. Get over it.
A council member and my assembly member are demanding that they be let back in.
Well, not on my watch, but we'll see.
Well, there were a couple of other incidents after the march. There was some crazy guy sprayed bear repellent, BEAR repellent, into the crowd of Pride March revelers in Washington Square Park afterwards, injuring 51 people, including a number of police. This guy said he felt under threat, but he's been charged with a lot of things. And there was also a shooting very near to the Stonewall.
Across the street, yeah.
Like, I want to say gang related. They were young.
Yes. Teenagers, two groups. We don't know formally that they're gangs, but two groups who confronted each other and shots were fired and a couple of people injured. No one has expired from that yet anyway, but right. An unfortunate coincidence of events there.
Right. And by the way, New York City Pride did compromise with the goal cops, the gay cops, and they let a truck with projections on all their sides show their, organization and let that into the parade.
Look, I've known Brian Downey for years, who is the head of the goal group, the Gay Officers Action League. I think he has a good heart about all this and really wants to be part of the community. But these guys, when push comes to shove, are cops, and that's how they operate. And they're not speaking so much. They say they negotiate within the department. I believe that, but it hasn't stopped the NYPD as a whole they've attacked the end of the Queer Liberation March for years, just wading in with batons and pushing over people on bikes and pepper spraying for no reason at all, just to be mean and dominant.
And the Catholic Church can be mean to us sometimes.
Yeah.
We pointed out on this show, but they have a very pro-gay, group over at St. Paul the Apostle Church in Manhattan, and they celebrated their Pride Mass at the Stonewall National Monument. I have never seen such a thing. I don't even know how I feel about it, but there it is.
How about that gold jacket?
Yeah. Well, so no, but that's I guess that's an encouraging sign. And they don't seem to have gotten into any trouble with. Speaking of national monuments, the Department of the Interior is, they're trying to wipe out stories about us and everybody else across the country. You go to a national park, they have a QR code. Tell us if there's something offensive about the way they're displaying history. So people have been filling these things out, especially at the Stonewall Monument, and saying, I've noticed there aren't enough signs about how a tyrannical government is trying to whitewash history, taking the T and Q out of the way the park tells the story, etc. But this is at all national parks, and people are fighting back against this.
Love it. Love that grassroots people's action. All right, so we go to the non-people's action Supreme Court.
Yes, we should. I just want to mention that, by the way, the only major league team not to have a Pride Night is the Texas Rangers. So Baltimore has scheduled their Pride Night for the Rangers series for the last 2 years.
Excellent.
All
Will
right,
George W. Bush be there?
Court got a host of bad decisions. I would say they have double edges. There's this horrible court. We have 3 nice people on it and 6 religious bigots. So now parents can object to LGBTQ classroom content to things. Now, of course, I guess it means that we can, and Alito went out of his way to be homophobic in this decision. But
yes.
Now we can start objecting, I suppose, to having the 10 Commandments in the classrooms or any sectarian material. By the way, at the press conference about this, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, repeatedly referred to it as, this is the trans book case. I mean, they always go after the most vulnerable people. They're so disgusting.
They are, and so transparent in their bigotry and their contempt and their exploitation of people with less power.
I mean, Alito in this case, he goes on at length about Uncle Bobby, getting married, and this is so horrific, and no religious person should have to be exposed to this. It's just like it is insane. Our very existence. There is no sexual material in any of these books or any of this stuff. We can start objecting to heterosexuality, I guess.
We could, but we're better than that. We just joke about it. But yeah, clearly the problem here is not, bad images. It is about our very existence, all of us across the board. And that is really sinking very low and putting us in a lot of danger.
I keep repeating, this isn't just about us. This is about destroying public education.
Yes.
The same way that, Trump goes after the universities over trans, he just wants to destroy the universities, period. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Satanists are going to have a field day using this case. And by the way, the Montgomery County schools say, we're going to keep up our LGBTQ inclusion. If we have to work out some system where a kid has to leave the room over this, we'll do it. It's a pain in the neck, but we'll do it.
Yeah, this doesn't supposedly directly attack curriculum. It just makes it possible for everyone to walk out of the room when that curriculum comes up.
Right.
But the other thing, the no nationwide injunctions case is interesting because, of course, we have been railing against handpicked judges in North Texas issuing nationwide injunctions against our stuff for years. We've been offended by that. So it's whose ox is gored, I guess. But at the moment, the Trump people are upset about the judges who are issuing nationwide injunctions against his executive orders. So they have brought this case to the Supreme Court, which has said, yes, that's right. We can't have that.
Well, but come on. This decision is, I think, ultimately disastrous. I mean, Trump's going to be able to, keep invoking, no, you don't have a right to birthright citizenship. And if you can't afford a lawyer, or if you can't get a lawyer, you may just be deported, even though you were born here.
Well, I think, isn't the conventional wisdom now that that case will continue to be brought and we should win that case in spite of this, but it's going to, in general, get in the way of us stopping some Trump executive orders.
The point is, this is such a blatant, constitutional right written explicitly in the Constitution. It's the kind of thing in times gone by, the Supreme Court would say, no, give us that right away. No, you can't do this to anybody.
Right.
Period. That's what they would do.
But that's why the assumption is that ultimately we'll win that case, because it is so explicit.
All bets are off, Ann.
Okay. We could make a little 10-cent bet on that.
And then, we won the ACA prep case, the whole business of, can a panel of HHS decide what can be covered and what can't? So we won it. RFK, who's the head of HHS, won it. What's he going to do with that power, though, is the question. He can now start appointing panels, as he has, that are getting rid of all these things. So,
and the Supreme Court has an addendum to the Scrimetti case out of Tennessee, where they said that Tennessee had the right to forbid trans care of trans youth and maybe beyond. They have now issued a notice to the states of Idaho, North Carolina, Oklahoma, and West Virginia, saying that you may now revisit the cases in your states where judges said that you did not have the right to ban that care, and you can go back and win those cases now and go ahead and ban that care. They have reached out to those states and said, don't settle for those decisions. You now have the right to ban trans care.
And then, of course, in Texas, they're one of the states that insisted on age verification for watching adult erotica online. Okay, but this, of course, is going to be a bonanza for VPNs. And for better or worse, kids are better at using stuff like that than the poor adults who are probably going to be nervous about sending their picture IDs in to a porn company. It's a burden on the tech challenged.
All right, should we talk about those? Oh, wait a minute.
Put that quote up from Ketanji Jackson about this is about the birthright citizenship case. She says, it is not difficult to predict how this all ends. Eventually, executive power will become completely uncontainable and our beloved constitutional republic will be no more. And that's what we're on the verge of on this, this 4th of July.
The right wing has very carefully put all the building blocks in place. The appointment of these Supreme Court justices to totally tip the balance, the re-election of Donald Trump, the takeover of the Congress. It's all there, and they are pulling those levers quite forcefully and happily.
Right. Okay. All right. So, by the time you see this, things may have changed if you're watching a couple of days later. But the Senate did pass the big ugly bill, and it is just horrendous. And beforehand, there were AIDS activists down in Washington, down there shouting at OMB Secretary Russell Vought, V-O-U-G-H-T, at a Senate hearing shouting vote lies, people die. We do have pictures of some of them, right?
People die! Reform PEPFAR now! Vote lies! 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 People die! Reform PEPFAR now!
I recognize that people feel passionately.
There's Eric Sawyer there getting arrested. Kate Barnhart was one of the people down there. She was in the video. She said the arrests afterwards were very rough by the Capitol Police. They used uncharacteristic force and handcuffed them too tightly, but no major injuries. They're fighting the PEPFAR cuts around the world. We're just letting people die who were totally dependent on American largesse for AIDS medications.
And now USAID is out of business, and the disgusting Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, now in charge of that too, says, well, they never did anything. They only saved 90 million lives around the world and could be saving more. Never did anything. They were useless.
It makes you ashamed to be an American.
For a long time.
But this bill, which again, as we sit here, it's in the hands of the House, but it includes bans on, it tried to include bans on Medicaid and CHIP paying for gender affirming care. But actually, the House, are we ready for this picture?
Yeah, the Senate parliamentarian.
Yes, the Senate parliamentarian rule, that's not germane to the bill. She stepped in and she cut a bunch of bad things out of it, which is encouraging, but it remains terrible. You've heard about the number of people. Everybody, of course, on Wednesday was being distracted by the Diddy verdict, but this bill, I mean, all that people should be doing is calling Republican representatives, especially in swing districts, and say, how dare you vote for this? You've got Lisa Murkowski saying it's a terrible bill. I vote yes.
I got what I needed. I vote yes. Yeah. It's disappointing because she stood up on so many other things, and I was sorry to see her do that. But that's where it stands at the moment. She was saying she hoped the House would kill it, but as we tape on Wednesday afternoon, there's no great hope, in spite of a lot of bluster, that they're actually going to kill the bill.
Well, I mean, 14 million people being kicked off Medicaid. I mean, this is especially, of course, terrible for people with AIDS, for older people who might need to go to a nursing home someday. Even if you think you have them. Even if you do have the money to afford a nursing home, they can't afford to stay in business without a lot of Medicaid money. So if this stuff disappears, what are people thinking?
Well, that's what they're saying about rural hospitals, for instance, too. You may think that you have enough to protect you, but if these institutions disappear, you have nowhere to go.
And we're cuts to LGBTQ services were already underway. We have a picture of our friend Shep Wanan there at SAGE for LGBTQ older people, here with Chris Olner. SAGE stands to lose millions in funding. Yeah. And Shep gave a quote to the Times. He said it's in the back of everybody's mind. He's lived with HIV since 1984, and he's received health care from Callan Lord, a nonprofit clinic, and GMHC, and from this, and he says it's all at risk. He says, through it all, I always knew I could rely on gay people. I don't know what straight people do, especially when they get old. So he has confidence in us.
Shep, eat your dinner.
They're going to close. This bill is going to knock out 200 of 600 Planned Parenthood clinics.
Yeah.
Closing
awful
600 homes, 300 rural hospitals.
But meanwhile, they have time.
And of course, they're turning it into a police state. The big money, and Vance is very open about this, the big money is to lock everybody up in the country over immigration.
That's right. He says all this stuff about Medicaid is irrelevant in this bill. The real point of the bill is to fund ICE at much higher levels so they can make more alligator Alcatrazes and put people in and then throw them out.
And outside this bill, this is not in the bill. This is just something they just decided to do. We're going to withhold $7 billion to schools for after-school programs.
Unbelievable.
And you know, even though it's illegal and the Congress appropriated the money, we're just going to do it. Randy Weingarten, the out lesbian president of the American Federation of Teachers, said it's lawless.
Well, that's the description of the entire Trump administration. They just do exactly what they want to do. All these executive orders are unconstitutional. They're all losing in court, but now they've been forbidden to be, you know, challenged in court, and they withhold money where they want.
And our homosexual Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, is on the verge of erasing all the key protections for LGBTQ federal workers. And House Democrats are screaming about this, and he doesn't seem to care.
He's getting worse and worse.
And they did go ahead and rename the Harvey Milk ship for somebody else. It's all very petty.
It is. That's the thing. And as they're making these sweeping changes that are just going to decimate so many millions of people in the country, they have time to rename the Harvey Milk USNS ship for Oscar V. Peterson, who I'm sure is a deserving and wonderful human being. But so is Harvey.
Right. By the way, on the school front, lots of new money for LGBTQ stuff in the schools in New York City's budget and in the California state budget as well.
Good, but meanwhile,
that's the seed.
But the administration has forced the president of the University of Virginia to resign because he was doing too much DEI stuff. And so he said, look, I could fight for my personal job, but that feels selfish. It's better for me to resign and let the university keep its funding.
Yeah, I mean, but they're not going to stop there. And of course, Governor Youngkin has appointed now the majority of the members of the Board of Visitors at UVA, and they're all going along with this. And the right wing is cheering them on. Now, they're almost short of elected Democrat next year. Maybe we can start reversing it.
Abigail Spanberger. And the University of Pennsylvania has now agreed to bar trans women from all women's sports at Penn, and to go backwards and take away all of Leah Thomas's records from her swimming career several years ago at Penn. They're all just totally cowed and bowing down.
Well,
now, what do you think of this move by supposed centrists in Congress from both parties to put together a third party?
Well, I mean, I've said before that in red states, people of progressive instincts should run as independents where the Democratic brand is damaged. And that happened in Nebraska last year, and the guy almost won against a Republican. And that's what I think should happen. You're not, I mean, when I get something from a red state, from a Democrat, I'm going to oppose this horrible person. You're not going to win. So, I mean, except in very rare cases. So run as an independent and caucus with the Democrats, or, you know, et cetera. Yeah.
Well, there seems to be, you know, again, I think all of this is a lot of talk, but there seems to be a new little move to create a third party. And a couple of bright lights from the business world. Some American Airlines shareholder put together a proposed shareholder resolution to, you know, cancel all DEI programs at American Airlines. So they put it to a vote, and well, here's a little video that'll show you what happened.
This week, American Airlines told a far right-wing group, "Not today, Satan." American Airlines and its shareholders voted down a proposal this week to drop out of the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index. While the National Center for Public Policy Research may have a fancy name, it is a conservative, extremist right group tied to Project 2025. They've tried to pressure a lot of corporations, including Costco, Microsoft, Apple, and now American Airlines, into dropping DEI. This conservative group tried to convince American Airlines shareholders that they would lose profit by supporting the LGBT+ community and DEI. The shareholders weren't buying it. When they cast their votes, it was 276 million to 6 in favor of keeping American Airlines in the Corporate Equality Index. American Airlines' response? Staying in the index brings value, aligns with their values, and encourages customer and employee trust. American Airlines has had a perfect score in the Corporate Equality Index for 20 years, and they're not stopping now. They're sponsoring Dallas Pride, and you'll continue to see them show up in big ways for the community. American Airlines joins Costco and other corporations showing the value of inclusivity.
Well, that's a nice bright light. 98% of shareholders voted to stay in the HRC index. And there's a new report out, something called the Gusto report, that says 10% of new business owners are LGBTQ, 10% they are younger. They give better benefits to their employees, health insurance, retirement benefits. They are good managers.
Good. Okay, let's go to some crime stories. In Atlanta, police arrested a group of teens for stealing and destroying pride flags from one of Blake's on the Park, Atlanta's most well-known gay bar there. So that these guys these punks got themselves arrested. And then let's move on to New Orleans. Mark Richards, a longtime music teacher there, lost his job at a Catholic school because he had a husband. His husband died 2 years ago. Some disgruntled parent saw the obit from 2 years ago and said, "Get rid of this guy." He's not actively engaging in homosexual activity. He said, "It was no big secret that I was gay." He was there for 25 years, much beloved. The parents want to keep him. The students want to keep him. No, he's got to go. He was considered a beacon of kindness.
Well, this is the classic example of how they really hate us for who we are, not because we're married. He's a widower. So I think they reveal all there. It's really about who we are, and watch out. And that's St. Francis Xavier Catholic School in Metairie, Louisiana.
Yeah, one of the parishes that's going to have to cough up money for all the sexual abuse that was tolerated.
Yes,
all those
exactly.
years.
But on
All
the marriage front, we've been talking about marriage because it's the 10-year anniversary of the Obergefell Supreme Court decision. Almost 400,000 couples have been married since the Obergefell decision, and overall, since marriage was made legal in states and then the U.S., there are over 900,000 same-sex married couples in the U.S.
In Massachusetts, the Supreme Court this week said they will not hear the appeal of a teacher fired for anti-LGBTQ and racist social media posts. This woman, Carrie McRae, she'd been on the job for like a week, and they discovered all this racist stuff, transphobic stuff. She went after Admiral Levine, as an obese man who thinks he's a woman, that kind of stuff. So, they said you can't work here with stuff like that. She was asserting her First Amendment rights, and she is not going to be heard by the court. She's running, but she is running for state senate again after losing.
Oh boy. And meanwhile, in Georgia, a library manager, Livonia Moore, has been fined because she allowed a display with a youth trans book when Aiden became a brother and the right wing complained about that. So she has been punished for that. But good news from Florida, the young trans woman who announced that she was going to challenge the Florida law about no trans women in bathrooms and went into a women's restroom and just washed her hands and got arrested. No charges are being filed against her. 20 years old.
We are looking to file charges against it because in New York City, right up the block here, a 22-year-old man was beaten during an anti-gay attack last week. This is the surveillance video of the hate-filled assailant who was shouting all these anti-gay slurs while, beating him. The victim was left bruised but did not go to the hospital. He did report the attack to the police, so they're looking for this guy. Call Crime Stoppers.
And there was another one in Ramapo, New Jersey. What was that one?
Well, yes, in Rockland County, 2 men are charged in
the
crimes in Wesley Hills. These guys, one of them is from Queens, one of them is from Monzy. They are accused of luring 2 men using dating apps on separate occasions into meeting in a children's park, and then they would rob them at gunpoint and beat them up. So they are being charged up there. And then in Far Rockaway, Queens, 3 men brutally attacked a 28-year-old woman, yelling anti-LGBTQ slurs at her. One of the assailants strangling her until she lost consciousness. F you, you tranny, N-word, F-word. Oh my God. It just, the violence that's out there.
Exactly. And a little political violence in Columbia, South Carolina. The city council has repealed its ban on conversion therapy because there's a Republican gubernatorial candidate who is threatening them with loss of state funds. He hasn't even been elected yet, but he's able to bully them into repealing their conversion therapy ban.
All right. Some of the people that we lost.
Yes.
The award-winning out director Mark Brokaw has died at 66 of cancer, survived by Andrew Farber, his husband of 36 years. Now, this guy won all kinds of awards. He directed Paula Vogel's How I Learned to Drive, but so much stuff on Broadway, worked with Douglas Carter Beane and Charles Bush and Kevin Elliott, and Nikki Silver, and Wendy Wasserstein. I mean, it goes on and on. He had such a terrific record. Including Broadway shows, Cry Baby, Heisenberg, After Miss Julie. He is much beloved, 66 years old. And then, go ahead.
Also beloved, Paul Libben, a producer who died at 94. He was a longtime president of Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. And you can see from the charming smile on his face that he was a great guy, involved in many, many, many productions. A long life.
He worked at the Circle in the Square for like 49 years. I mean, my God, he produced so much great stuff. I've seen a lot of his work that he produced, survived by his wife of 70 years, Florence Rogue, and 3 children. And then I have sinned.
Well, maybe you have, but this is the classic picture. I love that you got this picture. This was Jimmy Swaggart when he was apologizing for having been caught on camera entering a motel room with a prostitute, sex worker. He died finally at 90 of a heart attack.
And his ministry goes on. He was very influential with Ronald Reagan and George Bush. His TV ministry reached more than 2 million Christians worldwide and generated 60 million in donations during the height of his ministry. I mean, people.
But what a hypocrite. Rejoicing throughout the land when he was caught. He had gone after another minister, accusing him of sexual sins. And that guy hired a private detective to follow Swaggart around and got the picture of Swaggart going into the motel room with the sex worker. And that led to this tearful confession to his congregation. He got caught again a few years later, also with a sex worker. his denomination defrocked him, but he just went on preaching independently because he was a great money raiser and popular guy.
And his son is continuing the ministry. Shall we go to international news?
Just one note, the Lavender Hill mob went after him in 1987, a year before he was caught on camera, and went to the local station here in New York, broadcasting him, and said, here are all the horrible things he said about gay people, and eventually got them to take him off the air.
Right. All right. The big international news was what happened in Hungary.
Yes.
They passed a constitutional amendment saying if you have a gay pride march, every one of you is going to be arrested for hurting children. So 100,000 people, they'd never had more than 30,000. 100,000 people showed up in Budapest, backed by the opposition mayor there, who essentially made it a civic event for Budapest. And Orban doesn't quite know what to do. He keeps saying there's going to be consequences, but he's going down in the polls. He's 15 points.
This march was not only a pride parade, but a protest against Orban very explicitly. And the cops, who are usually very subject to Orban, just sat on the sidelines and did nothing, which is great. And the mayor, of course, announced all this as a protest against Orban. So it was and made worldwide news with this photo. What must Trump think?
In Manila, well, we've been out there marching against him by the millions, but it's not stopping him. Because we don't have an election coming up until next year. In Manila, the historic National Museum of Fine Arts there was lit up in vibrant rainbow colors to show allyship there. Pride flags raised across all of its museums. So that's encouraging.
But in Istanbul, Turkey, they once again held a pride parade under objections from the government, and reports of 50 arrests at the pride parade, very violent arrests, very cruel arrests. But those Turkish activists just keep doing it year after year. And
yes, and in Indonesia, 75 people were arrested at they're calling a gay party, and this is very serious there. They can face, they subjected them to questioning, HIV tests when they arrested them. It's horrible there.
But good news from India, where one of the state's high court, Andhra Pradesh, has ruled that trans women are women and should be treated as such with equal rights to cis women. A nice, unexpected win.
And
the International Olympic Committee has now announced a study of the participation of trans athletes in the Olympics. Of course, some of this is under pressure from Trump and others. There's a new head of the Olympic Committee who, there she is.
Christy Coventry.
Announced the study. So Imani Khalif, the boxer who was triumphant at the last Summer Olympics, is, of course, upset about this. And she said, now, she was born possibly intersex, is not transgender, but has been questioned and tested and excluded all over the place. She said, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts.
All right. And by the way, India may recognize trans women as women, but in the United Kingdom, the Prime Minister is calling on all public agencies to enforce a recent Supreme Court decision barring trans women from facilities that align with gender identities. We accept the ruling. We welcome the ruling, Keir Starmer said, and everything flows from that as far as I'm concerned. Whoa.
All right, AIDS news.
Sure.
Our associate producer, Bill Ballman, pointed out to me that the ACTG website, which lists all clinical trials in the country, now lists only 3 active trials, and none of them are recruiting at the moment. And there are 4 pages of trials, 40 trials approximately, that are closed at the moment. And all this is about withholding funds from the NIH. And
the big thing on CBS Sunday Morning, Ted Koppel, all the people in the cancer trials who were being thrown off.
yeah, I'm getting through this just in the nick of time, I hope. But a lot of people in terrible trouble. Also, a big study of senior people with HIV, the final report has been held up. We don't know whether that will ever see the light of day.
Okay.
Entertainment news?
Well, yes, I finally saw Prince Faggot, which, I missed when it opened. It's an off-Broadway play by Jordan Tannehill. It takes off from this picture of 4-year-old Prince George of the United Kingdom and the way that many saw this as a blossoming gay boy at the time because of his pose. So that's what it takes off from. But it's a great ensemble cast led by David Greenspan and a couple of trans actors. Now that's Prince George grown up, who's got a boyfriend. And, it features the royal family and they're fairly supportive. But it's what it is? It's a much smarter play than Red, White, and Royal Blue.
Oh, that was terrible.
Yeah, but because it deals intelligently with these issues about sexuality and royalty. And it's at Playwrights Horizon through August 3rd. My only caveat, of course, is that they have a terrible sound system for people who are hearing impaired. So I had to read the script afterwards. It's sold out now, unless you become a patron.
A couple of things I saw to recommend. On PBS, the documentary we've been waiting for, Janice Ian, Breaking Silence, I saw online. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Much better than I imagined. Highly recommended. And on HBO, Enigma, which is about trans life in Paris in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Also quite fascinating with some of the characters there. Enigma on HBO, Janice Ian on PBS.
The Getty Museum in Los Angeles has a big exhibit called $3 Bill, Evidence of Queer Lives. And one of the exhibits is the act up picture of Ronald Reagan. He kills me. It spotlights art, memorabilia, personal stories from 1900 to the present day. So this is through September 25th at the Getty.
And on the East Coast at the Library of Congress, the Sondheim papers open to the public July 1st this week. And if you want to go look at his actual notes and papers and everything, they're at the Library of Congress and they're available for you to look at.
And I would worry about them right now, given the fact that they don't seem to be protecting the Library of Congress.
It's true. All right. Upcoming movie about James Dean.
Yeah, Brandon Flynn has been cast as James Dean in the new biopic about him and his gay life, which is all based on the book, William Bass' book, memoir, Surviving James Dean, because they used to go out together. So it really deals with going to really deal with his homosexuality. And our friend Peter Tatchell has written about why it's time Wonder Woman was allowed to live her bisexual truth. And he's got an article about that. And he says DC Comics, although they've done a lot of other gay stuff, they're very withholding about Wonder Woman. And I'll link to that in our email. Go to gayusatv.org, sign up for it, and you'll get these links.
New film festival in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, coming up in a couple of weeks with a couple of gay films. The River Valley Film Festival, Cowboy Boots and Kill for Love are a couple of films there. If you're in that area, you might want to check it out.
And the next big national march across the country is going to be on July 17th in New York. They're just going to have a gathering in Foley Square at 5:30. But you can go to 50501, Google July 17th, and you can find something near you.
Every year, the Dyke March in New York ends at the bottom of Fifth Avenue with splashing in the Washington Square fountain. We thought you might enjoy some of that on these hot days. And we will take you out with that and see you next week back in the studio.